Policing in the United States has been a hotly debated topic, especially in recent years. Citizens and politicians alike have been juggling with the idea of police brutality and reform. But what has our legal system been deciding? Let's start with qualified immunity. The legal doctrine of qualified immunity was created by the Supreme Court in 1982 in the case of Harlow v. Fitzgerald. Qualified immunity is what protects police officers and other government officials from being sued by citizens of the United States on the basis of many things, like misconduct, use of excessive force, use of deadly force, injury, or damages. Qualified immunity was created, quote, in order to give government officials breathing room, unquote, so that they can successfully perform their duties, especially for police officers, without the fear that they will be held liable for any action they perform. Police officers have different responsibilities compared to citizens, with their job being much more dangerous than, say, a corporate 9 to 5. But does that give police officers the opportunity to outright abuse their power? The Supreme Court created a two-step test in order to determine if a police officer is granted or denied qualified immunity when they are being sued for excessive force or misconduct. The first deciding factor when a judge or court is deciding to grant immunity for a police officer is whether the facts of the case show a constitutional violation. The second factor is whether that constitutional right was clearly established at the time of the misconduct. In simpler terms, the person suing the police officer must prove that their constitutional rights were clearly violated. This test to determine whether or not a police officer is granted qualified immunity is almost always decided through the eyes of the police, whether they were fearing for their life in a situation. The victims of police brutality, however, are left with almost no say in the decision. The pattern has been that qualified immunity is granted in almost all cases. An article from the Legal Defense Fund explains the horrifying effects that coincide with qualified immunity. Quote, in Georgia on July 10th, 2014, a county officer, in the process of trying to apprehend an individual who wandered into another family's yard, tried to shoot a non threatening family dog in the vicinity of 6 children, including 2 kids under the age of 3, but missed the shot. The dog retreated into the home. At no point was there anything to indicate this dog was threatening or bearing hostility towards anyone. Officers then held the children at gunpoint and directed them to lay on the ground, an order with which the children complied. The dog once again approached the officers, and an officer again attempted to shoot him, only to shoot a 10-year-old child instead. After the case went to court, the officer received qualified immunity. Unquote. The consequences of not being able to hold police accountable for their actions is dangerous to the people of the United States. So, how does qualified immunity affect the people of the US? Policing in the United States has a long history of racism, targeting black and brown people at much higher rates. Quote, black Americans are killed by police twice the rate of white Americans, unquote, an unexcusable statistic that has affected black citizens and their relationship with the police and federal government. Implicit bias plays a large role in the United States police force. These subconscious attitudes and internalized stereotypes affect how the police treat certain people. This has extremely detrimental effects on how police treat people of color in the US, making people of color a target for police brutality. The United States court system has created a doctrine which allows for police to abuse their power and discretion over the people. The issue of police reform is a continuous battle to protect American citizens, especially those of color, from the overwhelming power the police has been given. Targeting qualified immunity is the key to the possibility of reforming the U.S. police force. Police officers, when abusing their power, must be held accountable in some way for their actions. Thank you for listening.